Welcome to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. I'm Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
This show features questions from the Personality Hacker community that we answer in about 10 minutes. We've been using personality types in our coaching for years, and we'd love to answer your questions about personal growth through the lens of type. You can find out more about us at personalityhacker.com. Okay, now let's hear today's question.
Hi, Joel and Antonia. My name is Rebecca, and I'm an ENTP from Chicago. My question is about ENTP's FI blind spot. 2 months ago, I was fired from my job because I work at a very small company and the boss replaced me with a nepotism hire. I felt indignant, but I got right to work right away by applying to other jobs. I used my energy to focus on moving forward because I didn't want to dwell on the negative. However, after applying to 2 jobs, I quickly lost steam, and over the past 4+ weeks, I've just been languishing. I've done my best to keep it at the back of my mind, but I think being fired has severely affected me. Saying this out loud now, I know this event has affected me way more than my brain or heart has let on, and I'm wondering if ENTPs have particularly low emotional quotient, because it always takes me a really long time to process negative events, if I do at all. And frankly, I don't know how to. Do you have any tips? Coincidentally, I also have a really hard time crying. Thanks to the both of you for this great podcast.
Thanks, Rebecca, for the question. So I'm going to frame this as, do ENTPs have low EQ, low emotional quotient? Antonia, you have ENTP preferences. Here we go. Do you have access to, I'm kind of being silly here, but it's hard sometimes to activate your emotions or get to your emotions.
Yeah, one could argue nigh on impossible. So if you're going to reframe it to, do ENTPs have low EQ? Well, I would call it introspective intelligence. The answer is yes. By nature, we do. Now, there are other aspects of EQ that we are a little better at. I would say intrapersonal dynamics is something we can tap into, but I think that introspective piece, the ability to process our own emotions, is always a challenge.
Well, and also just even understand the nuance of the emotion you're feeling. Because I think when you go internal, anyone that goes internal, it's not just like, oh, I feel angry. It's one exact emotion with clear definition. You go in there and you're like, well, I feel angry, but that's like 70% of it. There's like 5% disappointment. There's like 3% shame. Like as you start going, and that's even grossly oversimplified. If you introverted feeling users like myself, we go in there, we're like, dude, I couldn't even tell you all the emotions. It's like a billion different like mush of all this stuff that's happening all at the same time. And I have a lot of distinctions I could make internally, but it'd be hard to even articulate it to someone in the outer world. And here ENTPs love to articulate things in the outer world. They love distinctions. They love clean lines. They love clean thinking. And emotions certainly are not that.
Yes, quit your bragging. I have distinctions between my emotions and know what I'm feeling as I'm feeling them.
But I'm saying, but the desperate attempt for an ENTP is to create those distinctions, right? And yet
Yes.
they continually evade you. So this could be like an exercise in suffering.
Yeah. Well, and I think what I'm hearing as well isn't just this idea, from Rebecca that she's not really tapped into her emotions. And what happens is that when you're not tapped into them, when they come up, they're like a beach ball you've been holding underwater. All of a sudden, like they are there and they're exploding up. And then I also heard, it's terrible actually. And then I also heard it's hard for me to process an experience that I've had. So we're not just talking about introverted feeling, like what am I feeling right now and what does this mean about me as a person, and trying to kind of process what's going on in there. I'm also hearing the challenge of introverted sensing or memory, which of course is our 3-year-old or inferior function as ENTPs.
Yes.
Which is, I had an experience and every time I think about it, I don't even know how to feel about it.
Yeah. And to that point, introverted sensing or memory, I was surprised when we started doing our personality life path mentorship course, where we would work with people one cognitive function a week. And we got to the introverted sensing or memory function. It's always the most emotional week in that program. Yep. Always. Almost 100% of the time. More than the feeling function weeks. Yeah. So there's something here that we're carrying emotion in this part of ourselves.
Well, most of us have a bunch of unprocessed material from our past. And when we think about it, it doesn't make us feel good, so we kick the can, right? We go, now, if you have introverted sensing or memory as a preferred function, if you're an SJ type, particularly ISJ, you've got a leg up on all of us because you're processing material from your past, whether you like it or not. So there's like a hygiene around this. There's plaque that builds up when we don't process our experiences from the past. And I don't mean to like reframe them or learn the right lessons or, I'm not talking about any of the other introverted functions, specifically reliving an experience and registering how it made you feel somatically. Like how did your body experience this? What information did you end up taking in? How did your perspective sort that? What exactly is going on for you in all of this? So it is a challenge for people with ENTP preferences to deal with a situation like what Rebecca is talking about. Means calling upon our inferior function, our 3-year-old in the car model, and our 7th function, our introverted feeling or authenticity, which is in Dr. John Beebe's model aligned with trickster energy. Now, there's volumes and literally volumes that have been written about trickster archetypes, right? I have a book called The Trickster Makes the World, and it's one of many, many, many books that indicates just how complicated our relationship is with this archetype, but how important it is. But one of the ways that I oversimplify it in my mind is part of what a trickster does is it hides from us, right? It's tricksy, right? It puts us in double binds. It puts us in situations that feel like no win. And part of integration is recognizing, and you've mentioned this multiple times, Joel, the trickster archetype energy we're the most familiar with in the West is Halloween, right? What kids say is trick or treat, right? A trick or treat is a double bind. You either give me a treat, which is you sacrifice a resource in my behalf, you give me something that you own, or I'm going to play a trick on you.
I'll damage your resource.
Exactly.
I mean, in a way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I either get resource from you or I damage your resource in return. Now, it's not a bad thing, right? When we say things like that, it's like, yeah, that's terrible, or maybe we shouldn't be doing that anymore. No, we actually need to have ways to represent these archetypal energies in our society and in us as individuals. So there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's actually good to play it out in this sort of playful way so that we can actually acknowledge this archetypal energy is a real thing and that we need to keep it in our consciousness. Otherwise, it unconsciously undermines us. But in that scenario, and I'm hearkening to something you've said before, Joel, because I think it's so brilliant. Whenever we're dealing with the trickster, it means that we have to give something up.
Yeah. Well, I look to see it as a trap or between a rock and a hard place. And you're going to lose resource. It's like that person that got their arm caught in that movie. I forget what the name is, 100 or however many days or hours.
Well, it was a real story, actually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they got their arm caught. It was like, I either lose my life or I lose my arm.
Yeah.
And it was like, you're going to lose something.
Yes.
And they chose the arm over their life, which was probably a better choice for them. Like most people, that's the choice they would make. But you literally had to give up a resource, and it was their physical arm in that scenario.
Well, and they also had to give up the ability to be comfortable in that. I mean, they weren't comfortable in that situation, but they had to literally cut their arm off. So they had to also pay with pain. Yeah. So the challenge with the 7th function is, or this trickster energy is, we have to give something up. And we are, as people, we're pretty idealistic, right? We don't want to have to give something up. We want to be able to come out the other side just doing some things, right? Like maybe making a few, like maybe work. The sacrifice we'll make is work, right? But we don't usually want to have to give something important to us up. And so in a scenario like this, and Rebecca, I'm using your question to be a launching pad for what I'm saying next. I don't know the rest of your circumstance or situation, so I don't know if you've already done what I'm talking about, but I'm just going to talk about this more theoretically for a moment. As somebody with ENTP preferences, part of what we have to give up, and because it's aligned with introverted feeling or authenticity, is how we see ourselves. Yeah. It's our identity. Part of what we have to give up when we're doing legitimate introverted feeling processing work, processing our feelings and our emotions and who we are based on this, is we have to give up our self-perception. If we saw ourselves as a competent, capable person and we find ourselves getting laid off, we have to deal with the fact that we might have to give up some of our impression on that. You said it was a nepotistic hire. Maybe the thing we have to give up, or you have to give up in that scenario, and again, I'm speaking abstractly because I don't know all the specifics, but maybe what you have to give up is that the world is fair, right? Or that there's justice. Maybe what has to be given up is a sense that maybe there's value to nepotism, right? That's a weird one to think, because we always think of nepotism as being always bad, but maybe there's a value to nepotism that you don't want to have to reconcile. Now, I'm not saying there is a value to it. I'm just saying maybe that's the thing that has to be given up, right? Is that the injustice that happened to you might in some weird ways be part of a higher ethic. Again, I'm talking totally abstractly, and I'm not indicating that I believe that. I'm just saying what is true and authentic for you at the depth of all of this. There might be an answer that lives inside of that you don't want to acknowledge, that you don't want to face. That's the experience I have. When I'm going into this function, into introverted feeling or authenticity, I find myself in double binds all the time. I find myself feeling damned if I do and damned if I don't. And a big piece of being able to process emotions that live in here is having to give something up that's important to me, something that I think is of value. I have to give a treat in order to not have the trick of not being able to process my experiences. And then when I do that, I also have to force myself to get into a situation where I'm reevaluating what truly happened, not trying to reframe it, not trying to understand it, not trying to put a spin on it, not trying to figure out what it means in a larger, in the bigger spectrum, but just seeing it as it was and how it truly impacted me, and relive it somatically, relive it in the experience of it, which can be very painful. It can feel like you're cutting something off, right? Like the pain of it. So the bad news is that that usually there are sacrifices to be made when an ENTP is doing legitimate introverted feeling and introverted sensing work. In fact, when we coached with Dr. John Beebe, and he said integrating the 7th function into the 4th is usually considered work done later in life. It's a culmination work. It's some of the most important work we can do. So you're talking about what is basically some of the most important work that we as ENTPs do, and it's very difficult. That's the bad news. The good news is that it is incredibly important work. And if you find yourself in a situation that's forcing it upon you, particularly as a younger person, you're actually doing work that is usually reserved for later in life, and you're bringing it ahead and you're figuring out how to do it now. And it is overcomable. You can get to the other side. You just have to lean into what do I not want to have to give up right now? Now, I've read multiple times in Jungian literature that the auxiliary function is a cushion for other functions, particularly our inferior or 3-year-old function. That means introverted thinking or accuracy is a cushion for all the rest of it. And so when I'm in a situation like this and I find myself just getting into the guts of it all, and I can't, I'm in the shower and I'm crying for hours in the shower or whatever. The one question I try to ask myself to get to the other side is, what am I lying to myself about right now? If I can get there, if I can ask myself to be intellectually honest about all of it, what truth am I avoiding? What am I lying to myself about? What do I not want to see? Oftentimes that will create a guide out of the situation for me. It'll create a guide out of the depths of these feelings and the unfairness of everything, because my introverted thinking or accuracy will tell me this is the truth you don't want to look at. And then now I know what the resource I have to give up is. Now I know what the sacrifice is. Now I know what I'm trying to avoid. And if I can look at that and I can go, can my identity accept this? Can it meet my radical honesty halfway and go, this is the truth I don't want to see, and now that I see it, I can't unsee it, and now I have to make it part of my experience and part of who I am? That's how you get to the other side. Now, it's easy. This is 10-minute type advice. I'm probably going over 10 minutes, but this is less than 15 minutes to say, and it is a lifetime to master. So we're talking about depth work here, but I think it is a crucial, crucial question. And I do believe that you can get to the other side of the experience you're having.
Yeah. Thanks, Rebecca, for the question. You can ask your own question about personality types or personal growth. Visit personalityhacker.com/questions. We also have programs designed to help you with your personal growth through the lens of personality types. Again, visit personalityhacker.com and find the program that's made just for you. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Thank you for listening to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. We'll talk with you on the next episode. Hey, it's Joel from Personality Hacker. So a big reason people get into personality types is usually to improve their relationships with other people. And you can understand key differences between you and someone else when you understand how type works. So clearly, personality type is applied to relationships. But what about the relationship with yourself? Well, personality type can also help you navigate your career, or maybe an educational path that you need to follow, or other opportunities that present themselves, and it helps you know which are the right choice for you. And ultimately, personality is the key to unlocking identity-level worldview and life purpose. It all starts with getting the owner's manual for your personality type. In this owner's manual, we cover the basics of your personality, and then we dive a layer deeper to connect your personality to your relationships, your career, your worldview, and identity, because we believe it's your life, and it should be designed for your personality. So start your owner's manual journey at personalityhacker.com. When you access your owner's manual, I recommend focusing on the ideal day exercise first, because when you start crafting your ideal day, you're being mindful about the type of lifestyle that you want. So designing a life around how you're naturally wired makes sense, and you can finally stop fighting yourself. So come discover and develop your unique personality at personalityhacker.com.